Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon video. So today we got some really interesting pieces of news, two of them to be exact, one good, one bad. Let's go over the bad news so that way we could end the video on a high note. So if we hop on over to world.digimoncard.com, which is going to be the official website for the English version of the Digimon trading card game, we could see that they have this new button that is basically stating that it is going to be a warning about how others can utilize their property and license. So if we click on that, here's just an image of the full thing. We can basically see that this is just legal jargon for, hey, we understand that you are utilizing our property without our permission, so you might want to stop doing that before we have to take legal action. So this is just them protecting their IP, and like any big company with a large IP, that's something they really want to protect. And even though it is a little bit unfortunate that this is basically just going after the automated simulators, this is basically just them saying, hey, we are the ones that are going to be making the game. We choose how to make the game and what we want to do with it, and you are infringing on that right, so you might want to stop before we have to take legal action. So that's really all this is. I do believe that like databases are totally fine, and then not automated simulators like Tabletop Simulator, Octagon, and Untap are probably okay, because those are essentially just databases that you can manipulate the images to do various things. It's not like any of those are directly ripping off the game itself and passing itself off as the game, whereas the automated simulators kind of are, and that's the whole point and purpose of the automated simulators. So again, this is really just going after those, and while it is unfortunate, it is in their complete legal rights to do so. Like, this isn't really something that we should be mad about because this is just a normal part of the legal world. This happens, again, with so many other games and so many other companies. They're just trying to protect their intellectual property, and we really shouldn't fault Bandai for taking this type of action. At least they are nice enough to put out warning before actually taking action, because they didn't have to do that and they could have just straight up took the action, but they're being nice enough to at least put out a warning. So that way, whoever this is actually affecting can stop before legal action is actually going to be taking place. But again, we really shouldn't be mad at Bandai for doing this because, again, it's just in their complete legal right to do so. So let's get on to some good news. So over in Japan, they ran a voting contest for people to vote on what Digimon cards they want to get reprinted as alt art box toppers in BT06 Double Diamond. So we finally have the result of the voting that people took part of, and they chose to do the top 10 cards. So here are the top 10 cards that are going to get reprinted as box toppers in BT06. So some of the cards were a little bit more obvious than others. You were allowed to vote for 3 cards at a time, and I chose a lot of high rarity cards just because having high rarity cards show up as alt art box toppers definitely makes those cards really easy to get. But there were a couple cards that I was a little bit surprised with because they are on the lower rarity side, but they are considered as staples, so it only makes sense that you want to get those staples back into players' hands so that way they are more readily available for players to be playing around with. So Upamon is a staple for blue. It is at the rare rarity, and it's definitely a really solid blue Digitama for basically any blue deck that doesn't have a dedicated Digitama. Next, we have Veemon, which is just, again, another really solid blue staple for a whole bunch of different blue decks, just because this is a really solid card because he has the jamming ability, and again, he's just another blue staple card, so it's nice to see these staples getting reprinted as alt art box toppers. Terriermon's another card that was a really interesting pick. I don't necessarily see this card as a staple, so this just might have been a card people just wanted to see have a nice new art to it. So Terriermon does have a really nice ability where he just stops the opponent from gaining memory outside of their tamer effects, so it's not like he's good in every single matchup, and it's not like he's a tech card in every single green deck, but again, it's just a nice card to have a good reprint of with some brand new art. Next up, we have Devimon. So Devimon is just, again, another staple card for the color purple, just because the retaliation ability that he has innately and he gives through his inheritable is just really powerful, and there's almost no reason for a purple deck not to run him, just because he is one of the primary removal cards of purple. Next, we have Aldeman. So Aldeman actually took me kind of a surprise. It's nice to see that we are getting an SR getting reprinted as a alt art box topper. So his rarity definitely was a good factor on probably why he was chosen or why he was voted on, but Japanese players might just really like Aldeman, and that could also be a factor because he is a pretty cool Digimon, and Frontiers was definitely a really underrated season. But regardless, what the card is doing is definitely really strong because he's basically a level 5 that's almost acting as powerfully as a level 6, just because his security attack +1 is really good, and he DP boosts himself if you have a hybrid or tamer in his evolution source. So again, he's just a really easy power card. Next, we have Angewomon. So having an Angewomon on this list isn't really a surprise just because Angewomon has that waifu value. On top of which, this version of Angewomon is actually a really powerful card, and that's no surprise because she has two really good abilities. So her first ability is that she can just minus the security attack on one of the opponent's Digimon, so that way you could stall a little bit longer. And then her inheritable effect is absolutely insane with a whole bunch of different megas in the game, just because she allows you to just play your yellow level 3s for free, and that's just really good because yellow has a whole bunch of really powerful level 3s that they could toolbox and utilize in various different ways. So Angelmon getting a reprint definitely isn't that big of a surprise. Next, we have MegaGargomon. So MegaGargomon is just another really popular and really powerful Digimon. So it's no surprise that he's getting a reprint, or he was voted to get a reprint, because he is following the ever so famous Terriermon line. So a lot of people really like Terriermon and his whole evolution line. So MegaGargomon makes sense from a popularity standpoint. And then on top of which, from a meta perspective, this card is still a very good card just because he has two really, really powerful abilities that allow you to deal extra damage and rest the opponent's Digimon down. So again, he's just a really powerful and really popular card. Next up, we have Millenniummon. So Millenniummon is definitely not really a surprise just because he is a high rarity card, and people probably were thinking, oh, let's have a high rarity card, make it in as an alt art reprint, because he didn't have an alt art before, so now let's give him one now. On top of which, he is one of the primary villains in the new Digimon 2020 anime, so that also might be playing a part in his popularity because he just has so much buildup going into that anime that people definitely really like the Digimon. But again, the card itself is also holding a high rarity, and on top of which, it's actually a really good card that still sees some play just because he's a level 7 that can go into black and purple, so he has a whole bunch of application there. And on top of which, he has two really powerful abilities, one as a removal, one as a recursion, so he's just a very hard Digimon to deal with when he lands on the field. Next, we have my boy Chaosman. So it was kind of weird that Chaosman, the base version, had a alt art, but Volderarm didn't, so it kind of only makes sense that people, again, want a high rarity card that's a very powerful and very played level 7 to have a reprint just to make him more accessible and more available for more players. So not only is he just a really powerful Digimon on his own right, he's also a really popular Digimon because, like, lore-wise, he's basically the student of Omnimon, and they have, like, this student-mentor relationship, so, like, he just kind of is bouncing off of Omnimon hype, on top of which people just really like him, and he's a very powerful card, holding a high rarity without an alt art. And then the last card on the list is Phoenixbond. So Phoenixbond is definitely a really interesting pick just because this is a staple in red Omnimon builds, or it has been for a while, just because he has an evo cost of 2 as a mega and he has 12,000 DP naturally. So he's just a really hard card to deal with at times for the opponent. On top of which, this is a starter deck card, and this can only be found in the starter deck, so having alternate ways to get starter deck cards definitely makes it a really good pick for a possible reprint of. So I definitely think this is not so much for popularity, but this is just for playability, and I definitely agree with people wanting to get a reprint for this card to make it more accessible and more available. So this is kind of just the results of their voting, and I definitely agree with a lot of the choices that people were voting on. And I definitely like the fact that these are all getting alt art box toppers for BT06. So that's kind of the good news, that we're getting alt art reprints of very played and very popular and very powerful cards. It unfortunately has to be coupled with the bad news, but that shouldn't stop anyone from enjoying the game, and I think the game is going to be in a really good state, and I'm really excited to see what BT06 is going to hold. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. And I'll see you in the next video.